Okay, welcome to everybody who is on today's webinar. Thank you for registering for another edition of Squash Canada's Coach PD webinar series. Today we have a master of everything coaching related, Barb Cooper, who will be talking about how to be effective with communication. So it's a food for thought type webinar. So she's going to give you a little tidbits and ideas as to how, like I said, to be effective with communication. And it's going to be an engaging participation-based discussion. So if you have questions, please unmute, stop Barb in the middle of the presentation and ask your questions or create discussion. We want this to be very engaging. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Barb for today's presentation. Take it away, Barb.
Thank you, Jeff. And again, thanks to Jeff, you are getting these webinars because Jeff is such an integral force in terms of driving the coaching program, which is obviously very close to my heart. I want to thank you also for taking the time out to, in your busy day, everybody's busy. And so to take the time out to get a little bit more information or another perspective, to me is super valuable. I appreciate it. It would be a bit daft for me to sit here with Jeff. Jeff has heard some of this stuff before. So for us to just be talking for an hour would not be cool. And being able to share some thoughts with you. And these are my thoughts. So they're not written in a book, but they are stuff that over the years I have collected through experience. So for me, as I said, I'd love to know who you are. I can see sometimes where you come from. So just give me your name, your province, and then if you would be kind enough just to say, I coach or I do not coach. All right. And if Spider, maybe I can see that you're there. If you could mute your video, that would be great. But if you could introduce yourself, and then it's just name, province, and whether you coach or not. Spider, do you want to start? Can't hear you, Spider.
Sorry. Good morning, Spider Jones. I'm the president of NWT Squash. I'm also a coach from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories.
Thanks, that's great. And if you could mute your thing now, that'd be great. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm from London, Ontario, and I coach on a limited basis.
Thank you. That sounds like Lisa Bogdan.
It is. Hi, Barb.
Hi. And if you could just mute your, that's great. Thank you. And Grace.
Greg Sweeney from Bowmanville, Ontario, and I am a coach.
Simon.
Hello. Yes, Simon Hall, Ontario, and I am coaching.
Great. Hello, Simon.
Hello.
Chris.
Chris Lean from Nova Scotia, and I am a coach.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Nice to meet you. Peter?
Hi, everyone. Peter Kakalitris, Ontario. I do some coaching and I also take a lot of lessons as well. So in both squash and tennis. Nice to meet everyone. Great to see you again, Barb.
Great to see you, Peter. Jeff Williams.
Hi, everyone. Jeff Williams here from Edmonton, Alberta, and I coach.
Thanks, Jeff. Justin? Can't hear you, Justin. Justin? It's not coming through to me. Okay, I'll do Justin's for him. Justin is from Moncton, New Brunswick, and he coaches. Who have I missed? Narasula.
It's Nick Razula. I'm from Calgary, and yes, I coach.
Thank you, Nick. Have I missed anybody?
Me?
Oh, Sebastian?
Yes, you know me. I'm Sebastian from Moncton, president of Squash New Brunswick, and I coach.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Glad to have you.
Glad to have you. Cool. So thank you for letting me know that you're coaching. So this is going to be very much designed for coaches. And again, Jeff, if you could put the next slide up, that would be fabulous. Thanks. So I want you to think carefully about the language that you use, because language is as subtle as salt and pepper. And the other thing about language is that it tends to have emotional attachments to it. And if we're not careful, we use the language that we've always used. So what I'm challenging you is to think about what you say, listen to it, analyze it, and then imagine that somebody who does not come from squash has to take instruction from what you're saying. And I'm going to tell you, I remember buying my first computer. And I bought it, I got it home, I unpacked it, and it sat at the side of my bedroom. And then at about 12 o'clock at night, I had time, I got home from work, and I started to try and turn this thing on. And I had the manual, and never in the manual did it say, turn the key to the hard drive. It's a bit like on a computer, you know how you have to hit the screen, and up comes a little icon, and it's a start button, but actually you need to press it to stop. What I want you to think about is what you are saying to your athletes, and a little change can make a huge impact. So before we start, I have tripped on and continue to fall into all these traps. I am not saying I'm perfect, I am saying I'm on a journey. But I'd like you to think about your words and come with me on that journey. And I'd like you to think about what words you say on the squash court that imply something that's not accurate. Jeff, could you put the next slide up? So this is a bugaboo of mine, and it's been a bugaboo from when I first got here from England. Canada, typically say Boast Drive. We're going to do Boast Drive. Now, when you say something like that, what are you conveying to your athlete? What impression are you conveying? And I want somebody to answer this for me.
Maybe that they already know what you're talking about when maybe they don't.
That's a possibility. What else? What about the drive piece?
I think that it limits the perception of options, because when you say Boast Drive, like in my head, I'm thinking, well, you want me to hit hard, low drives into the back.
Exactly. So the drive piece automatically gives your athlete a suggestion that they should be belting the ball. And what I want you to try and think about, and this is right all the way through the manuals, it's right all the way through our language, and I'd like you to think about what you could substitute for instead of drive to make that more appropriate. What could you say?
Boast length?
Absolutely. If you said boast length, and you had qualified what a length is. Do you know, a lot of you have been coached by me, so a lot of you know this, but when you're talking about length, what are you actually talking about?
Getting the ball to the back of the
Great.
Getting the ball to the back of the court.
Okay, and what does it have to do in relation to your opponent?
Get it past the opponent was what I was going to add, sorry.
Forces the opponent to make a weak return.
Absolutely. But when you say length, then you know that your athlete, if you've qualified it with an outcome, so that's the action method too, that makes it very, very ethical. They know that when you say length, it's supposed to go past your opponent, it's supposed to go to the back of the court, and a perfect length is what?
Bounces twice.
Second bounce in the back wall, Nick. If a perfect length would be something that bounces twice because it then becomes a winner. All right. So if you were to talk about both length, that would make a huge difference to what happens on the court in terms of how your athlete perceives it. Now they could lob the ball. They could put a 3/4 pace ball. They could hit it hard. They could hit it above the cut line. They could try and hit it below the cut line. They could do all sorts of stuff with it. And what they're trying to do is get the other person who's hitting both to struggle. Does that make sense? Any questions? You know where I'm going. A thumbs up would be good. Sebastian has his hand up. So Sebastian, how can I help you? What's the question?
Sorry, I was just clapping.
Okay, good. So then I started to think about things like, we say boast cross court straight. Now, do you like that language? Be careful what you say here.
Did you say boast cross court strength?
No, straight.
Straight, okay.
You can put a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I can't see it, Jeff can, so you can do whatever you want. What do you think of that? Boast cross court straight.
There's got to be a better way to say it.
Well, I don't mind it, you see, because when you're talking about the boast, I understand what I'm trying to do. A cross court is directional and the straight is directional. There's no implication that when you say the word drive, it has to be straight. So I'm just asking you to examine it. I'm not going to belabor the point. This is just one piece. The other one we've got here is you guys, okay guys. Now I'm a female, okay, believe it or not. And I can tell you, I've used it myself for decades and it still bugs me. What are we saying to somebody's subconscious?
Not everyone's a male.
Everyone's a male, yeah, absolutely. What could you say instead of guys? What word could you substitute?
Athletes.
Athletes?
Yeah,
What else?
Everyone.
Everyone? What else?
Folks.
Folks, fabulous. What else?
All.
All, you all. People, you people.
Or as they say down south where my wife is from, y'all.
Exactly. All I'm saying is, again, we all do it. I'm just saying, be aware of it, because what you want to be is what I would call a conscious coach. So you use your language, you use your physical stature, you use how you hold yourself, how you set up the room, how you do everything in a very conscious and a very deliberate way. So then let's go on to good shot, bad shot. How many times have we used that one? What could we replace good and bad with?
Opportunity for development.
Yes, absolutely.
effectiveness.
Effective. I love that one. We're coming to that on the next slide. So was it effective?
Accurate.
Was it accurate? Did it work? That shot worked. Good. If you said to somebody that shot worked, what would they automatically interpret?
That the other ones didn't work?
Maybe. That's a
It's
bit
okay. It's okay to hit that shot.
It's okay to hit that shot more than that. I'm always thinking about it in relation to an opponent, okay? Lisa?
Sorry, I was just going to say that it was a good shot.
Lovely. All I'm trying to say is, if that shot worked, it automatically means your opponent is under pressure. So when it's effective, your opponent is under pressure. The ball got by them. It did what it was intended to do. There's a whole connotation in there.
Excuse me, I've used a 1 out of 10 rating rather than a black and white, good, bad. I'll say if they've hit I've also used bronze, silver, and gold. That's a golden shot. But if kids are used to scores in school, marks.
Yeah.
And if you give them an 8 out of 10 on a shot, they know that that's really getting very close to ideal.
I agree. And that's great. 8 out of 10 also means that there's room for improvement. And when you're playing any shot, the shot is always evaluated by, first of all, did it go, if I'm hitting a length, did it go past my opponent? Secondly, if it went past my opponent, did it die? If it didn't die, what do I have to do to make it die? So if there's a modification of what you did, that 8 out of 10 means I've still got 2, I've got to do 2. Be careful not to give them a 10 out of 10. Perfection is a moving target, right? So it's just, I personally would be just careful of that. But I love the scoring system. As you say, the kids are used to it.
Yeah, they seem to relate to it.
Yeah, that's great. What about this, that was right or wrong? That was the wrong shot.
That's pretty negative.
Yeah, can I give you a concept here? If you hit an inaccurate ball, a loose ball to your opponent, what does it mean to you?
You're going to either lose a point or be under pressure on the next return.
But what does it mean to you?
I'm not in control.
Concepts, okay? What does it mean to you physically?
I hit a bad, well, to me, it would mean I hit a bad shot. I don't need to be told I was hit a bad shot.
No, if you hit a bad shot, the moment everybody hits bad shots on the court, everybody hits loose balls. It's always there.
I've lost
a loose ball. What does it mean?
I've lost control. I'm not in control.
I agree with all of that. But what does it mean physically? What you have to do?
I've missed my target is what I would say. And then now I have to run hard to recover.
Brilliant.
You have to work harder to make it back.
Brilliant. So a loose ball means more work to you. That's all. It doesn't mean you're good, bad, ugly, incompetent, competent. It just means more work.
And it means you're on the defensive.
Yes, but it means more work. A tight ball means less work. So what I'm trying to get you to do is take the judgment out of those things and put into place an expected physical result. That means I got to work harder. I got to run harder. It means more work. Loose balls mean more work. Tight balls means, oh, I can breathe, I can stand on the tee, watch them struggle. I probably know what they're going to hit because they've got less choice.
So you're describing the benefit.
I would not go into anything other than, it's really simple. If you hit a loose ball, you're going to do more work. If it is ineffective, you're going to do more work. So yes, we want to hit them tight, but that's why. Not because we're going on this concept of I want to be a good player. I actually want to be effective.
coming back towards the action method and outcomes as opposed to other stuff.
So in other words, I see it with kids, you know, they hit what they judge themselves to be a bad shot. They've got that bad in their head. It's a loose ball, and they basically turn their back on it and walking away. And their opponent could fall down and shove it in the tin. But they've given up the shot. So they're not playing their opponent, they're playing themselves. And it's come from the judgmental language. What I'm saying is it's okay to hit a loose ball. No problem, just work harder. Simple.
Yeah, and players that are digging the ball out of the back wall or hitting off the back wall are almost inevitably hitting a loose ball.
Absolutely. But it doesn't mean you lost the rally.
That's right. You've kept the rally going.
Yeah, well done. This is good. It just means you're going to have to pay attention and work a little harder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Barbara, what I like about that is I think that people, myself, if I hit a loose ball, I think, oh, I quit in my head. But if we talk to players, that loose ball means work harder. It's a two-stepper, whereas a bad shot is done. It's just one step in our mind.
And the difference too is a bad shot means you're playing yourself. A loose ball means you're playing your opponent still. You know it's a loose ball, so what? I mean, there's people who've been stuck on the side wall and they watch their opponent hit a ball and they run over and got it. You're not dead. Just because you're not on the tee doesn't mean to say you're dead.
Yeah. And I also, for the same reason as our discussion earlier about, I forget the term that we were talking about, but anyway, the main point I'm talking about here is right or wrong. It's like good or bad. It's black and white. It's too simplistic and it's too all or nothing. And no shot is all or nothing, except the rarest of shots.
Exactly. And the thing is, you see, what I'm trying to say is they've got, even kids have got emotional baggage on good, bad, right, and wrong. If you can get away from that language,
right,
will not feel so judged on a moment-to-moment basis with you. It will become your very, very safe space. And they'll love you for it. Again, I mean, I'm moving on a bit, that we've got this footwork is correct or incorrect. And I have this whenever I'm even teaching learning facilitators, I have to say to you, I've never in my life had to teach a good mover how to move on the court. I do think the timing of the first step and the last step are very, very important. But how you get there is not that critical. What's important is, and Jeff, if you can slide on to the, skip the next slide and slide onto the one afterwards. What's important is that when their footwork gets there, it gives them a choice. And I'll come to that in a second. That footwork has to give them a choice. And then what they want to do is make an effective choice. But they can choose to play the wrong shot, what you consider to be the wrong shot at the wrong time, and still get away with it. Thousands of people do it thousands of times every squash match. So if you look at this slide now, I'm saying there is not only one way. And if you can get your language to open up a bit, then I think you can get your athletes to start thinking about stuff that is a bit more open themselves, which gives them more choice. So it says, the slide's saying what words can you use instead to give a different focus. And I put a couple down. These are definitions actually. Effective, successful in producing a desired or intended result. So if you hit a loose ball, what you know is it was ineffective, but it's not a disaster, it's just ineffective. You're going to have to work harder. If you hit an efficient shot. So effective is much more about the tactical goals and shot outcome. Effective is about the tactical goals and the shot outcome. When you talk about efficient, in other words, working in a well-organized and competent way, efficient ties into technical and physical goals, including footwork, timing, and stroke fundamentals. So in other words, if your stroke is efficient, you've got an early preparation. If your stroke is efficient, you've timed your last foot to arrive at the ball the moment you want to, which gives you choice. You've hit the ball, you've used a plyometric response, and you've come back, you've recovered from it. But both, I'm saying here, are less judgmental with less emotional baggage. And I just want you to really pay attention to that. Any questions so far? Comments? No?
Well, I like that you're pushing us away from the binary good, bad, and just making things too simplistic and too extreme, instead of respecting the nuances, the individual differences, the variety of shots that happen all the time, and so on. I think we need to be more nuanced in how we describe things.
And relate it back to the game. So the only reason you practice is to beat your opponent. You don't practice to be able to hit 12 balls tight to the wall. That doesn't mean anything. If your opponent's lying up in the front corner, as long as you can hit a decent length to the back of the court and past him, it's going to be effective. It doesn't need to be glued on the wall. That's what they need to understand. Okay, next slide, please, Jeff. At the top, it says you could ask the athlete to comment. So in other words, I'm asking you to start training your athletes to be able to evaluate their own shots, and not in a good and bad way, but in a tight, loose, effective, not effective way. And I want you to understand where I'm always coming from. So that picture was taken from the Full Monty. And I was going to show you another one, but I thought, no, probably too risky. So my full disclosure is just that picture on the side. This is what I personally believe. I believe athletes must have choice. So they must, my job as a coach is that my athlete has to have physical, tactical, technical, and psychological choice. And it's my job to help the athlete achieve this and for them to learn to make effective choices. So in other words, that's the journey I'm always going down. So anything that looks limited when they play, where they always hit cross court instead of choosing at the front of the court to do something else, that to me is a limited choice. If they can't get to a ball because they're tired, that's a limited choice. If their technique means that they can't get the ball out the back corner, that's a limited choice. If they start to play themselves as well as their opponent, that's a limited choice. And I then have to work as a coach to expand their choices there, give them the skills to be able to do it. So could you go to the next slide, please, Jeff? So I love mnemonics, okay? So Burrett's Freaking Cold is all about the biomechanics, the racket head control, racket path control. DDHSS is all about the ball controls. So I made a mnemonic up for choice. So choice to me is this: check where their choice is limited or predictable. And if you make predictable patterns all the time, I can tell you it probably takes about 4 or 5 times for you to do it. And then your athlete knows, and your opponent, I mean, and your opponent will probably know before you do if you're not aware of it. So they will have limits on their physical, their technical, their tactical, or their psychological choice. And that's what you check first. So just observe them, have a look. H is help them with that specific instruction of what to improve and how to change it. Then observe them and reevaluate it. Did that help? Didn't it help? Did they get it? Didn't they get it? If they didn't get it, let's do something else. Let's change the language. Let's try a different way. Instructions, I, that are clear and specific need to be formulated by you, the coach. And when I say clear and specific, I mean, and I'll go into it in a little bit more detail, but specificity means you start at the beginning of the stroke and you start getting their racket set. You're going to tell them something like, open the racket face more. And you would probably do it before they even hit the ball. Communicate the new instruction information to the athlete, and then empower the athlete by asking for information from them on the outcome. Now, that last one is huge. Why?
Because it's ethical.
It's definitely ethical.
Because our goal is to help them be effective and efficient. And if they feel and think it's awkward, then they don't understand where to go next or what to do. And they're just going to repeat the ineffective or the inefficient. They'll be frustrated.
Maybe. What else?
Well, it opens up two-way communication instead of you just telling somebody what to do all the time. When they start giving you feedback, first of all, you get information about what is connecting with that individual, and they're getting to contribute to the process rather than it just being a one-way street.
That's the key. I could sit here all day long and say to you, your athletes need choice. And you could give me the thumbs up and you could nod. But the moment I say, ask a question and I say, so what do you understand by giving, when I say give your athletes a choice, and you feed me back some information, what I will know is what's connected, what they've got, and what I need to putty up. So could you go to the next slide, Jeff? So what you find out is you find out what they understand. And from that point, that gives you a starting point to build on. Honestly, if you asked a 5-year-old, and early on in the lesson, you had said, oh, by the way, Sammy, can you do your shoelaces up so you don't trip? And then you do this lovely lesson with them on all this ball sense and hitting the ball as it's falling and all the rest of it. And you said to them at the end of the lesson, so what did you take away from this lesson? What do you think is important? They could well say, I think it's important to have my shoelaces tied up. If you know that, then you know next lesson, okay, I better start repeating myself again because they didn't get anything about squash except that I know that they're going to be safe. So that questioning piece is huge in terms of finding out what they understand and giving you a start. And then I put there, maybe you must repeat the lesson the following week using different language to explain. The other thing I'm going to ask you to think about is how you use what I would call squash language. So we've got a whole load of language that means nothing to anybody on the street. And one of them is perhaps when you say, take the ball early. And the athlete understands that as rush. And I'll tell you an example. This is true story. I was playing the final of the South African Open and I was losing. And one of my teammates came down to me between games and said, take the ball early. They said exactly this to me. Now I'm a coach. So early to me means take the ball more in front of me. I was taking the ball too far behind me. That's what it meant to me. I lost the match and I came off the court, and the person who came down to me between games said, "Why didn't you volley more? I told you to volley." And I said, "No, you didn't. You never told me to volley. You told me to take the ball early." And she said, "Well, that's what I meant." So what I'm trying to say is, in the next point, be specific about how to change, not what to change. If she had said to me, "Don't let the ball bounce, volley it, stay in front," I would have got that message. So the last point here is, belief words don't count. They're open to interpretation. So, and I've used this one. I used to use this one so much. I used to say, hunt the ball. Well, to me, hunt the ball means look for it. Now I say, don't let the next ball go past you. So if you think about length, what's a length got to do? Somebody.
Get past your opponent.
Got to go past your opponent. If it goes past your opponent, you will automatically move forwards in front of them. As you do that, the next thing you've got to do is play goalie and never let the next ball go by you. So a bad volley, let's say, an ineffective volley is better than no volley. Not volleying the ball is a sin, because it means you've made their length effective because you have to go back and get it. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay, so Jeff, can you slide to the next one? And we've kind of covered this, so I do want you to look at it though, and I'll give you an idea of how I would assess anybody. It doesn't make any difference who it is. I would literally see where their choice is limited. And it could be that they're slow to the ball and need more fitness. Maybe they're unbalanced and need more strength. Perhaps they rally and they should be attacking more. You see that they never lob, always choosing to drive. That's technical tactical. Always building the athlete's choice and freedom of shot is what I'm trying to do. And I would take the court and move it into 4 quadrants, the 2 front quadrants and the 2 back quadrants. And I would take one quadrant and watch my athlete in that quadrant and see how much choice they have and what choices they made, whether they ever lobbed from the front of the court, whether they ever dropped, what they were doing. And then I would do it from the other side, and then maybe the 2 back quadrants. And then my job as a coach is to decide what is my priority today, this month, this year. I can't fix it all. Rome wasn't built in a day. I have to take the priorities that I think are the biggest priorities and start to fix those. And build, what I'm always doing though is building in choice. Okay, does that make sense? Right. Any questions? Do you understand what I said? Because I have a tendency to go quickly. So if you don't understand it, please stop me. All right. Then Jeff, could you slide on to the next one? So now I'm talking feedback. And what does that first sentence mean? Coaches thinking out loud is not helpful. By the way, just so that you know, that is a little robot that the Brits have developed to give feedback. It's quite interesting. They're using AI on it. So back to the question, coaches thinking out loud is not helpful.
Because you're not filtering the information, you're giving out too much. It's not effective coaching when you're doing that.
Can you read the next sentence?
Yes.
Okay, I hear this a lot. I hear a coach speaking and they're on the feedback end of it, and they start by saying that ball hit the sidewall. When they're doing that, they are thinking out loud and they are calling their athlete blind and stupid. Does your athlete see that it hit the sidewall? That's a yes or no answer.
Unless they're blind, they would.
They see it. Is it necessary for you as a coach? You see, people think that this is constructive feedback. It isn't. It's not feedback at all. It's an observation. And you are saying something. Now, if you don't know what to say, I would say to the athlete, so what happened there? And maybe the athlete says, well, the ball hit the side wall. Okay. If it comes from the athlete, it's not so bad. What would your next question be if the ball hit the side wall?
How can you fix it?
Yeah, how can you fix it? So what do you think you did there? What did it feel like? Because if the ball hit the side wall, how would it feel to the athlete? What would the ball feel like on the athlete's strings? This is specific feedback.
Maybe they didn't hit it flush.
All right, but what would it feel like to them? So you're saying it would feel like a bit fluffy, are you?
Yeah, yeah.
What else would it feel like? If they take the ball behind their body slightly, what does the ball feel like on your racket strings?
Feels heavy.
It feels heavy. Now, this is a key for an athlete. If it feels heavy, it's late. It's behind them. It's a pull. If it feels light and fluffy, it's probably in front of them. And the emotional reaction is usually, oh, give me that one back again. You know, when you're on the golf course and you don't get hold of one of the shots right, and it goes away, your emotional reaction is, oh, give me that one back, let me try again. That's kind of what it feels like to an athlete when they hit a ball that's too far in front of them. So when it's too far in front of them, what specific instruction would you ask them to do to get them to shift the contact point back a little bit?
Move forward to the ball.
Okay, you could say, move forward to the ball. What else could you do?
Could hold.
Say again?
Hold.
Yes, wait longer. Wait longer. If it's too far behind, then they've got to speed their swing up a bit. But they'll know when it feels great. And what I'm trying to get you to do is get them to lock into that timing. Get them to understand what feels great, what feels heavy, what feels light. And it's not right or wrong, it's just what is. So once they understand it, they can make an adjustment. But to tell them that they hit the ball into the side wall is really not helping them at all. Does that kind of make sense? So you can see I'm using their feel, their own feel. I would be using questions to them. I would ask them to fix it. And I would give them a number of different ways to change that contact point. But they're all very, very specific. How many things would I fix at a time?
One.
Absolutely. And if you can't fix it, I wouldn't necessarily leave it. I'd try another language. I'd try another way. But what I'm trying to get you to do is I'm telling you specific physical steps, one at a time, on how to fix it. And that's being a coach.
Barb, I also feel it's important to talk about frequency, because I feel sometimes you can mishit one or do something, and sometimes people are quick to jump on it, or even the athletes are quick to say, oh, I did this wrong, before you actually see a pattern start to establish. So if you just hit one of, and in the next 10 you hit correctly, then you don't need to break it down or ask them to break down to fix it. But it's when you start seeing 2, 3 in a row start happening, that's when I feel the frequency is justifying that you can step in and then have them help you in the process.
Justin, 100% correct. And the more sophisticated you get with your language, they will even start to understand the one that they needed to modify for whatever, and they will start. The biggest thing is what you want them to do is be truthful about what's gone wrong and be able to fix it themselves. And that comes from them understanding what's going on and not being judgmental about it, just knowing that they're going to have to modify the thing time and time again. This is a very complicated skill, what we're asking people to do. It's an open skill with thousands of moving parts. So of course it's not going to be right all the time. Don't go there. Do not use right. It's not in your language. I would say, if the ball didn't go past him, I've got to modify it. And I modify it by either hitting it higher, tighter, wider, harder. Those are the 4 ways. It's simple. And again, the biggest thing I'm trying to get over to you is let your language work for you. Be conscious about the language that you're using. And get your athlete to take responsibility, so that they're not the little kid who looks out the window and says, what do I do? You know, they know what to do. They've got to get the ball past their opponent and then not let the ball go past them. Okay. Jeff, if you could slide on to the next one. So I'm going to ask you to, each one of you, to come up with a thought. If you're not comfortable sharing, I'm okay with that too. But this is for me as much as anything else. I would like to know what you understood from this talk, what you take away, just one thing that you take away from this conversation that we've had.
I could say one thing is that you're encouraging us to think in a more complex way than just a binary good or bad. I think being constructive. So when you're talking to the athlete, you're giving them concrete information they can use. And on top of that, I would also say couch it in positive language, especially if you're doing a group lesson or working with a team. You don't want to make one individual feel like they're being pegged for a particular fault or shortcoming. You want to keep it on a very positive, constructive, concrete basis.
Thank you. Exactly, Simon.
By providing the athletes with choice, we are empowering them.
Absolutely.
By asking questions, you are involving the athlete in, so they can self-analyze and therefore become better athletes in analyzing their own shots.
Yes, and just to add on to that, Jeff, it also tells you where they are.
I second that.
I think it's important also, not that I've done a lot of coaching, but I think it helps the athlete learn to coach themselves on a court during a match as well.
Absolutely.
When they can understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
I really like the concept of making sure you stick with outcomes as opposed to whether a shot is objectively good or bad, or grading it in that kind of sense. As well as the concept of, then that leads into, like you said, it's okay to hit a loose ball. It just means that you're going to have to dig yourself out of that hole.
Yes, more work. Start running. Absolutely. Thank you.
On top of asking the athlete questions, I also like the how to change, not what to change. That's very important in terms of getting it across to the athlete and making them understand the how as opposed to.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah. Any other comments?
For me, it's the push versus pull, where you're actually getting them to feel what it feels like to play a ball that's late versus a ball that's early. Regarding their striking shoulder and wherever the position the ball is, that's, to me, is a big deal, and I'm going to take that away for sure.
Yes, and with that one, then if you use language that is normal, when we talk about the tactical objective and the tactical context, we talk about that as coaches. But when you talk to your athletes, you don't ever have to say, what's your tactical objective? You can say, what are you trying to do? You can, and so when you're talking about your hitting shoulder and all that sort of stuff, they will know because they feel it. And as soon as you give them those concepts, you don't have to, believe it or not, a lot of the time, you don't have to get too, I'm going to say specific, but it's what you're saying. A pull is very specific. But you don't have to, as long as they understand the difference between a pull and a push, you don't have to get into the words of the explanation too much. If you say something like, I want you to contact the ball in front of your leading leg and close in front of your hitting shoulder, there's a lot of language there that maybe they could, if you said, I want you to push rather than pull, they might understand all of that. And it's just a thought. Try it, see what happens.
Lets you be a little bit less technical.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. It's not too much coachy. Any other comments?
Oh, one of the things that I took away was what happens when? Like, what happens when the ball hits the sidewall? What happens if you hit the ball square? What happens when you hit the ball in this position?
Cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Barb,
So Jeff, if there are there any more comments?
Yeah, Barb, my big takeaway was use your words wisely, sparingly, and ask questions to encourage participation. I find participation, most students learn best when they also participate in the dialogue, in the coaching.
100%, Peter. You and I both know we could sit there nodding all day long, but we're not participating. That's the summary in a lesson, right? Ask them what they take away. Don't tell them what they did. So here's my last thought, conclusion. And it's about your athletes. Let them improve, grow, and learn because of you, not despite you. And again, this comes from my experience when I was on the England squad, but not the national coach. And I used to find a lot of the time, the information was given in such a way that I had to interpret it. I was training one time with Heather Mackay and Brian Mackay. And Brian had a very thick Australian accent. And he talked to me about the drill we were about to do. And he said to me, go to this part, to this part, to this part, to this part. And I'm a coach, right? I was trained in phys ed. So I'm trying desperately to understand what he wants me to do. So I'm saying, so do you want me to go to the front backhand corner and then the front forehand corner and then come back into the back and either side? He says, go from this part to this part to this part to this part. And I started to laugh because I didn't understand. So I was hugely embarrassed. I felt completely ill at ease. And he said, Barbara, leave the court. So I went outside. But it was because I didn't understand. So what I'm asking you to do is think of how you're giving information. Think of what information you're giving. Think of the choice your athlete has. Can you build it? And get them to be responsible, but get them to feel like you are actually a partner walking hand in hand with them. Not somebody that you have to interpret. They have to interpret what you mean by take the ball early, rack it head up. Be specific. Anyway, I thank you all for allowing me to share some thoughts with you. I appreciate the opportunity. If you have any last thoughts, please speak now.
Thank you, Barbara. That was great.
Thanks, Barb.
My pleasure. Be well, all of you. Take care.
So thank you, Barb, for a wonderful presentation. And thank you to everybody for attending today's Squash Canada Coach PD webinar, Food for Thought and how to be more effective with your communication. It really does open your eyes to different ways of looking at things. And I'd be lying if I didn't say, going into this webinar today, knowing what Barb was going to speak about, I stole some of her ideas and I used it on the weekend coaching in a different sport. And you can apply it to not just squash, but anything you do that's coaching related. And I think it's very, very effective, as Barb was discussing. Just a quick reminder, we've got a couple of upcoming Coach PD webinars between now and Christmas. November 24th, we have the Coaching Association of Canada's Sport Safety Department going to do a webinar on the safe sport movement. This webinar is free. I cannot emphasize enough, it is not just for coaches, but officials, players, PTs, etc. Encourage you to register if you have not done already. It's going to talk about the rule of two, responsible coaching movement, you name it. And it's very vital to coaching specifically, but it's open to anyone. And then on December 1st, registration is not open yet, but should be in the next few days. Also a very important topic, coach insurance and risk management will be presented as well by CIBI Insurance. And so I encourage you to look for those two topics in the next few days and get registered. Otherwise, again, thank you, everybody. As per usual, we'll get this entered into the CAC Locker database in the next 24 hours and email out the recording and the PowerPoint slides to you for your reference. Otherwise, thank you again and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Barb.